You've used a lot of your past life and your marketing in launching this. How did you decide to actually manufacture your own product instead of co-packing or co-manufacturing?
I'm going to sound like a moron for saying this, but this is real. I didn't really know that there was an option. I wasn't
that's fair.
from the space. I observed other breweries, and my inkling was like, okay, if we're going to do this, we got to start brewing beer out of my garage.
I love how many times an entrepreneur's answer is, I didn't know there was another choice. Right? I solved the problem with the information I had. And that's, I think, what makes entrepreneurs so unique is that they don't stop and wait for more information. They just keep moving and keep solving problems.
This is Biz Ninja Entrepreneur Radio with your host, Tyler Jorgensen.
Welcome out to Biz Ninja Entrepreneur Radio. I am your host, Tyler Jorgensen, and today we get to talk to Joe Chura, who is the founder of Go Brewing. And this is really fascinating because we have been recently interviewing a lot of people in the alcohol and bev space, but they're not all the same. And I love what makes each one of these brands unique. Their founders have their own stories. And so we're going to talk with Joe about what he's done in the past in business, about his marketing expertise. But what makes Go Brewing so unique is really going to be a fun story for us to unpack together. So welcome out to the show, Joe. We're glad you're here.
Hey, thanks, Tyler, so much for having me.
All right, we're going to start in the middle, and we're going to do some going back and some going forward and zoom all around and unpack this together. So right off the bat, what is Go Brewing and what makes it unique?
We are a non-alcoholic beer company, but we're really taking a social beverage innovation platform approach, which we could dive into. So more than just non-alcoholic beer, but that's currently all we make. That's how we started. We never really made anything with alcohol in it. We make everything ourselves. We have a direct consumer business. We sell on Amazon, and we have retail distribution in about 20 states.
Okay, right off the bat, why do we need non-alcoholic beer? Now, understand, I'm someone who grew up, I didn't drink. So I didn't understand why people would still drink beer if they weren't going for the buzz.
Well, I mean, first off, what do you like to drink? Like what kind of just anything?
Yeah, so I'm a lot more open on my palate nowadays, right? But people have always said, beer's an acquired taste. So I always found it interesting, if you're acquiring it without the quote unquote benefit, right?
Yeah, I just think people like the taste of beer. That's kind of what I was getting at. Is like you might like sports drinks, you might like Gatorade, you might like Coke, whatever it is. Like beer is it is an acquired taste, but it's a taste people love. People like to explore different styles. There's we make 14, 15 different styles of non-alcoholic beer, but there's so many cool beer styles, from tapas breweries to dark stouts to everything else. And it's a pretty rich history of how beer was made. It was actually made for food consumption, like way back in the day. So it wasn't made to have heavy alcohol content. So that was just like it just happened to be an effect. And then as time went on, especially in the last 50 years, the alcohol by volume started to increase.
Right.
But, I think it's non-alcoholic beer for me is very personal in that I did drink too much. My father died of alcoholism in 2006. My brother was having major issues. A lot of people around me ended up passing away or ended up in trying to get sober in a variety of ways. And I was heading down a similar path, and I recognized it. I was really unhealthy. I was overweight, out of shape. I had a lot of anxiety. And finally, at the height of COVID, the craziest of all times, my wife and I were like, let's do this challenge called 75 Hard, which is 75 days away from alcohol and taking on all these other positive habits. And it changed my life. It was the first time that I had not been under the cloud of alcohol for decades. I started to feel more mentally clear, had less anxiety, and I still had these massive cravings. And the only thing that helped curb those cravings was non-alcoholic beer.
Fascinating. That is a really personal story. And I appreciate you sharing that. You've been an entrepreneur for a while. When was the moment in your life where you first realized you were an entrepreneur?
Oh, interesting. Man, I still think about this moment when I was approached. I'd been in the automobile industry for a long time. Started at Ford at the Chicago Assembly Plant in 1998. Spent 10 years at Ford. I was really had a passion for SEO and digital marketing. And I was approached by a friend of mine, and he said, hey, this other guy I know has a traditional marketing agency, but wants to start a digital marketing company. And this was like 2010. Do you want to join us? And I immediately responded with no, but I would create my own thing. And that it wasn't like a pre-planned thing. It was just more of like, I'm kind of sick of working for the machine, especially being in a big corporate infrastructure like Ford. Great, amazing company, gave me such a shot in life, but I couldn't really control anything. And I was like, man, to control my own destiny, I really need to have my own company.
That makes sense. And working in SEO and digital marketing is a very entrepreneurship thing, even if you're working for someone else, right? You the act of creating and working through all the problem solving is very entrepreneurial in general. So you launched a digital marketing agency, you started working in that, and had you done any physical product stuff before you launched Go Brewing?
No, not at all, man. Everything was pixels. I mean, I grew a digital marketing and then software company to 850 employees,
Holy moly.
well over $100 million of revenue. I ended up selling those companies in 2018. It wasn't at that level when I sold them, but it ended up growing to that level in the next few years. I stayed on as the CEO of those companies. But my first presentation ever was the keynote address, and it was from pixels to pints. Like that's what it was called, because I had no knowledge of making a physical product. It always intrigued me. I was always like looking at products like, man, that's amazing. I don't know how you do that, but had no experience whatsoever.
I like that. And so but you've used a lot of your past life and your marketing in launching this. How did you decide to actually manufacture your own product instead of co-packing or co-manufacturing?
I'm going to sound like a moron for saying this, but this is real. I didn't really know that there was an option. I
Yeah,
didn't, I wasn't
that's
from
fair.
the, I wasn't from the space. I observed other breweries, and my, my inkling was like, okay, if we're going to do this, we got to start brewing beer out of my garage. And then that then slowly grew into, okay, well, the beer's starting to taste good here. Let's build a brewery. Never once did I even think about co-packing it, because I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah.
Um, and it turns out it was the hardest decision, meaning like it is a lot of short-term pain,
Oh
but
yeah.
the benefits we get from it are substantial. Is that we can be way quicker to market. We don't have to rely on someone else for the fate of our business. If we fail, it's on our own terms.
Yeah.
We make our own product, and it's the quality and safety of what we do. Any beer is tricky. You have to be under this certain threshold of 0.49% alcohol by volume. And because has such low alcohol content, it needs to be safe on shelves for a long period of time. And
Yeah.
to do that, you have to pasteurize it and do all these things with the beer. And we did, like if that was done somewhere else and we didn't observe that, it'd be tough, man. It'd be
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I love how many times an entrepreneur's answer is, I didn't know there was another choice. Right?
Mhm.
I solved the problem with the information I had. And that's I think what makes entrepreneurs so unique is that they don't stop and wait for more information. They just keep moving and keep solving problems. What are some of the biggest challenges that you faced as you guys have been building, and how'd you overcome them?
95% of our issues and challenges have to do with the production side. And it's not necessarily the team. We have an amazing team. It is the machine, the equipment, the scaling, the risk of creating what I did was so great. And I was like naive to it, in that with digital marketing, as you know, like it scales well. You can spin up a server on it and Amazon Web Services or whatever, WP Engine, and build a WordPress site. Shopify is
Right.
incredible. And it doesn't cost a lot of money. Well, to build a brewery, you're talking millions of dollars. And then you launch with hopes that someone will buy your product either in retail or online. And you got to keep that going at really
Yeah.
small margins. So it's been quite the adventure to figure that out. And as we were realizing we were going to hit our capacity threshold earlier this year, I needed to find a quicker solution. Well, when you have your own factory, there's no quick solution. So I had to really think out of the box into how to scale the business, but still control the quality. And we did that by finding another brewery that had a lot of excess capacity, like many breweries do today, just because the craft beer industry is declining a bit. And instead of building our own facility, we're like, well, why don't we partner with another brewery? We form our own company together, and that way we can always maintain the quality and control that we want. And that's exactly what we did. But that has been a challenge. And now you're going into someone else's kind of house, and there's a lot of maintenance to be done. Things are breaking when they shouldn't be, and you're dealing with all that. So that has been a lot of my pain, relatively speaking.
That's a lot. And understanding your background in digital marketing and in just working in that space, what were some of the big early wins where you applied that past and your history into Go Brewing?
So I would not have even started Go Brewing had it not been for the ability to sell the beer we make online. And if you think about that statement, historically speaking, just go back 5 years ago, like no one sold beer online. It wasn't a thing. Like it's not really a legal thing. Each state is very restrictive in selling alcohol online. Don't ask me how wineries get away with it. So much easier than breweries, but it's just a reality of the space.
Oh, yeah. Still a lot of legacy laws from Prohibition era. It's still regulating a lot of this.
It's so wild. And even there's 7 states that consider what we make to be alcoholic, even though it has less alcohol than orange juice because it's made with barley. It's like bizarre, but it is what it is. And it was one of those things where we launched online and we were able to sell our product, but not only sell it, we were able to test the market. We were able to test flavors, what people were drawn to. We were able to ask zero-party data questions when someone purchased our product to understand what they wanted. Then once we started to build up that base, my acquisition costs went down because our repeat purchase rate was 55%. And we were able to continually grow the business. And now, we launched in 23, and now just, not even 2 years later, we've sold over 60,000 customers online. We've built up a really nice database. I cannot make a beer anymore in our current facility in 1 or 2 batches because it sells out so quick to our existing customer base through one email, like literally one email, and it'll sell out just because it's, we have such a great audience and they just want new flavors and styles and varieties. And we're able to hit people from California to Texas, and we have 2-day shipping. So we make it very easy for them to try our product. And when we have a new one, they get really excited about it.
60,000 customers in really your first under 2 years of business is insane, right? In any direct to consumer business, that's impressive, let alone a business that has governing restrictions and challenges and roadblocks. So really, really amazing. And to hear that you got 55% repeat customer rate, fascinating. You're probably starting, you have no idea what the lifetime value of your customer is, right? Because you're still so early and people are still just buying.
I know generally speaking, it's so the average order rate's $43, $44, primarily because we have free shipping over 40.
Yep.
And right now the LTV on most of our customers is 80 plus and rising.
Yeah.
We have certain beers, like we have the only gluten-free non-alcoholic beers. So that cohort of customers, that LTV is
crossover
a lot higher. It's 110 plus, just because it's a very unique beer.
Yeah, that's a big deal. So, you guys are expanding, right? You now have created 14 styles of non-alcoholic beer. You've got direct to consumer, you got Amazon, you're working through distribution. If you could wave a magic wand today and land one major account or be in one more market or one major win, what would it be?
California, for sure. We haven't tried California yet, to be honest, but California is a complicated state with distribution. And to put that in perspective, when I say distribution, that means working with a beer distribution partner. And typically we work with what I consider like tier 1 partners that they represent Miller, Coors. And why is that relevant to non-alcoholic beer? Because you sit on the same shelf. Yep. So you're going to work with that same buyer. So it's really, really important for us to make that association with that buyer and to be with those partners. Well, just in Illinois, we have 7 distribution partners. We just launched Wegmans on the East Coast, which is a big chain out there. To get that, we had to get over 20 distribution partners, over 10 states. So it's pretty complicated. So California alone is going to be, 10 plus distributors. But the reason why I say California is our number one direct to consumer customers from California. And
Gotcha.
we just haven't approached that yet. So waving a magic wand would be pretty incredible to be like, yep, we're in California.
Yeah. I had a direct to consumer business for a while, and our primary market was Canada. And I always thought it was fascinating because California had roughly the same number of people in it as all of Canada.
Right.
It's, so it's like, it's a huge state, a huge market. Like you said, it represents several submarkets. Let's stay in this vein of magic wands. If you had a magic wand and you could have one celebrity or athletic or athlete endorse the brand, who would it be?
This is a good question. And it's something I struggle with because NA beer spans so many people that if I had to have like one person, that is not as maybe polarizing, but I would say we have a relationship with Rich Roll as an example, and
He's a great guy.
He's a great guy. He was here during the inception of Go.
Oh, that's good.
It's hard for me not to kind of go back to that and just really feel grateful of that relationship and do more with him. Yeah. Every time we show up on his podcast, I know how many sales we're going to get. It created this luck for us where we found employees that listen to the podcast. So doing more with Rich and people like him, I think is where I would want to be. Yeah.
I met Rich just through another client of mine, a guy named Joe Lawrence that did a bunch of Ironman triathlons and stuff. But yeah, he's got a real good impact and good heart. That's a good person to have on your guys' side. You've got a lot of great things that you're building, right? Casting your vision, a few years into the future, where are you hoping to take the brand?
For sure, across the 50 states with distribution. So far, we have 20 in a little over a year when we started our distribution plan. Also creating sub brands. So we're coming out with let's call it a functional beer with Delta 9, hemp-derived Delta 9 in it, and
Gotcha.
And CBD at some point in the future. So we're really trying to stay away from alcohol, but be known for innovators in a social beverage platform. That's what I'm saying. So just really expanding there, and that's from like doing stuff with like that to functional beverages. Like right now, we have one of the first beers that have ashwagandha and L-theanine in them, and just things that give you an effect beyond just the taste.
Yeah, that's really great. I think that's a smart crossover. People that still want to drink the beer, have a little bit of a buzz, but without the alcohol and the hangovers and all the negative stuff. Really cool. What now? You've been an entrepreneur. You've been building this up. What's your advice to other entrepreneurs that are wanting to get into direct to consumer?
That want to get into direct to consumer?
Yeah,
do it. They're just like such a low barrier to entry to me to. If you want to get in the beverage space, I'd say direct to consumer is probably one of the tougher businesses. And why is that? It's fairly common sense. It's a very heavy beverage to ship. It leaks and it happens. And the customer experience on the other end, just a story, a customer received a bag literally from us at one point in time with like cans in them. And it was a friend of mine, and they messaged me and they're like, hey man, like, just want to let you know, like, I think your packaging could be a little better. And I'm like, you really think I sent you that bag with like a can that was leaking in it? And the reality was like FedEx had damaged it. They threw it in a bag, put it on the guy's porch, and that was the experience. So beverages is tough, very possible. But there's a lot of different things you could do. And again, creating a Shopify website, throwing Klaviyo, some flows in there, and build a product, man. It's like, there's no better time than today to be able to do something like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. The margin or the barrier of entry in direct consumer is really low. You don't have to go spend millions of dollars to build a brewery, right? You can co-manufacture, you can private label, you can do all these other things. What about just branding? How important to you is the general story and brand around a business?
Is mission critical, and it has to start with one thing, like how you want people to feel.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, when we built Go, it was our kind of just do it. It was a way to say, like, we all have agency in our life, and sometimes we overthink things, and mood follows action, which is what Rich says, is like, just by going, you're gonna figure things out. Like luck, and it's like creating your own luck too. Like luck doesn't happen sitting on your couch. Luck happens when you're out there, you're doing things, and you're gonna get so much further in life just by trying various things within reason, obviously.
Yeah.
Versus not. And I think your brand needs to stand for something too, and it needs to be a little bit of your personality and like how you want to show up in the world. And even for this new brand that we're launching, which won't be called Go, we're really being intentional about that. What do we want someone to feel? Like, what if we had to grant someone permission, like you said, the magic wand, and they get to our website, like what is that feeling? And that's where it starts. And then from there, all the other details kind of can fall into place. But if it doesn't start there, then I think you're missing things. If you're like, oh, well, so-and-so's doing this or so-and-so's doing this, like, don't chase other people. Like, what can you do? What can you build that's authentic to you, that you can tell an authentic story, but that also makes someone feel a certain way?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you went from running an agency, which can theoretically have very high margin, low cost of operations, right? It's human capital. So still a lot to manage, but into managing a brewery that is statistically very low margin, right? What was the biggest thing that you had to like shift or learn to be able to shift from those different business models?
Man, I'm learning so much every day. And really, it was funny. The first time I saw the financials, like I looked at our top line revenue, which we would stare at in my marketing in the software company. And then, you know, underneath you'd have your operating expenses and whatever. And then you have your net margins at the bottom. Now here you have this thing called cost of goods.
Right.
That sucks. And I was like, oh my God, what is this line? And it was just like, obviously I knew what it was, but like, that to me was so tough and different. And how do you manage conversion, cash conversion? How do you manage your inventory controls? You have all these assets and you don't want to have them for too long, but you don't want to have them you want to have enough. How do you manage all these ingredients and the supply chain? It's like insanity.
It's a whole other thing to manage.
And the problem with what we had, honestly, is like we were on Shopify and we had QuickBooks and we had all these tools. Like we couldn't even. There was no platform that existed at the time that we found that was within reason to even tell us how much beer we were making out of a certain style. So we had to build our own Shopify app to be able to quantify our brands, like how much are we making of this specific IPA? So we knew the supply and demand equation on it. And it was fascinating in itself.
Yeah, I think managing COGS and supply chain and bullwhip and all the things that happen when you start having to manage product and then shrinkage and damage and loss, all those things, it's so different than and you're still managing people, right? It's not like you just flip from managing people and human capital into, or, human cost into just physical product cost. You have both. How, what's your management philosophy? How do you address, leading a team?
Really, I mean, I was talking to someone yesterday. I think managing a team, and this is easier said than done, but the goal is to have the team operate as if you're not there. And every manager should really strive for that. Many times individual contributors become managers and they don't know that. And that's kind of what we're going through right now, is figuring that out. But also, like, the way I look at it is, it's better to give someone the destination of where you want to go and have them figure out the directions. Because if you give them directions everywhere, then they don't feel empowered. And if you lead them down a one-way street and they shouldn't be going down that street, it's your fault. Versus, I was talking to my team today, and we were working on a centrifuge, which is one of the things that, create a quality and style and flavor of the beer. And he was talking about the different turbidity of it and the variables within there. And I'm like, well, why don't you have the lead cellarman do that? Like, stop trying to tell him what to do. Have him created himself. So he feels empowered that he actually did something and he's fully capable of it too. So that's the thing. Oftentimes as an individual contributor, we try to take all that in because we have to when we're prideful. And it's actually the exact opposite of what you should be doing.
I like that philosophy. The entire idea of really empowering them to make decisions and to create those, like, but also document them, record the process, make it live without, beyond. It should be able to live beyond them as well, not just beyond you, right?
Yeah. And I often look to take away excuses, and it sounds worse than it is, but it's basically like, if you're like, when we started our brewery, if I would have just been like, hey, what do you think we should get, guys? And they would have came up with, tanks, fermenters, all that stuff that you need, we would have probably not had what we had when we started. I said, no, like, what is something that you're going to look back in a year from now and say, oh, we could have made better beer if we had this. Mm-hmm. And I got that. Well, why was that important? Because a year later, you have one shot in this world, like, to make a product. And a year later, I didn't want to hear that. So it's like, compound that philosophy over managing people and managing things. So communicate, try to get things off their plate if you can help, or delegate, coordinate communication. Like, all of that stuff is critical. And it's like taming a garden too. Once you get part of it, groomed and manicured, there's weeds popping up somewhere else constantly. And then you got to go back to it. And that's the analogy I used when I built the last company, because it was like, we'd have one team that was just rocking it. And then you step away for 3 days and then you go back and you're like, what happened? And I was like, we just met,
Yeah. It's insane how quickly things can unravel, or, as you said, weeds grow. You built Go Brewing because of a personal philosophy and some life changes that you were making. And to me, business is only a fraction of what we do in this life. What is one item on your personal bucket list that you're going to accomplish in the next 12 months?
Ooh, I've been into this sport called High Rocks, mm-hmm. and I plan to do every race this upcoming season. We're also a national sponsor. So if anyone's listening to this, come say hi to me. We'll be there. And since I'm going to be there anyway as a sponsor, I'm like, I'm going to do every race. Like, why not? So that's one thing. But one other thing is, I'm a support runner for a double amputee Afghan war vet. He was an Army Ranger. We've done 4 marathons together. He just got his PR in Chicago. We qualified for Tokyo and Boston. So I'll be doing those races with him as well.
That's huge. That's really cool. That's neat stuff, man. I really appreciate that. I think what you guys are building is really neat. You got to clearly have a really strong vision on what you're creating. So thank you so much for coming out on the show. And to all my biz ninjas, wherever you're tuning in, watching, or listening, it's your turn to go out and do something.